Hello and welcome to Indie Designer Journal episode 16. I'm very glad that you are all here for this episode. As you can tell, I sort of changed the angle of the camera and a little bit closer to me than you normally are, and that is because I typically film these episodes when I get home from work during the week, and it is now winter time, so I don't get the natural light that I normally get through my window right over here. So I have some lights set up to hopefully it's a nice tone and it's not too distracting. In any case, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be discussing a contest that the Game Crafter just announced this week, and that contest is the Single Card Challenge. So as soon as they announced this, there was obviously lots of questions in the community, not just the Game Crafter community, but all the designer different groups all over Facebook and Twitter. Quite a bit of buzz around this idea because it's pretty radical, because what can you possibly do on a single card? So we're going to go through some of the information that you can find if you go to the Game Crafter. You go to the community tab at the top of the page, and will be a tab below that for contests that are currently running. I believe there's another contest running for like a family style type game. I'm not exactly sure, but they do list all the different contests running, and you can find all this information that I'm about to go over with you there. But I thought it would be interesting to talk about not just the contest itself, but some of the ideas that you could possibly go with, because it's a single card. So before we go any further, let's go over some of these rules and come up with some ideas maybe together here, and hopefully in the comments I can get some good feedback on some ideas that people might have out there as to how you can possibly do this. So first and foremost, the most important thing about this contest, the most crazy part of this, is that the entire game has to fit on a single poker-sized card. So a poker-sized card, if you're not familiar, is 2.5 inches wide and 3.5 inches tall. So you're talking about an extremely small format. It must include the game itself and the rules. Now that's the part right there that gets me, because right away when I saw just sort of the tag or the post on, I think it was the Game Crafter's Facebook page for the designers, that's where I think I first saw the post for it, and I thought, oh well, I can just probably design some sort of game with just a single card if I can have the rules on a PDF or separately somehow. But no, everything has to fit on one single card. And when I read that rule, I was like, well, I don't think I can design anything for this. But being a designer and someone who loves a challenge, the cogs in my brain started churning and moving, and obviously I got the bug sort of thinking, how could you design something so small and make it somewhat intriguing? Because you're not going to make I assume it's impossible to make an extremely detailed game on one card. So you're going to have to hone in on maybe something small and gimmicky. Because the first thought I had is, how am I going to make a dungeon crawler on a single card? And my brain is still there, because that's how my brain works. I just love dungeon crawlers and roguelike adventures. So immediately I was like, well, how can I make some sort of game that I would design on a single card? And I keep going back to previous contests that the Game Crafter ran in the past. They've done a lot of smaller type game challenges, and in fact the micro game challenge that they ran, I think way back in like 2014, really had a huge impact on me, because I put 2 entries into that contest. That was the only contest I ever won on the Game Crafter, and that was for Dig Down Dwarf that won that contest. But how that really helped me is, prior to that, my first game was a little trick taker, Plague. The next game I made was Zogar's Gaze, in hindsight not one of my bests. And then I was getting bigger and bigger. Then I made a game called Tasnia. It was kind of a tile laying game. You build buildings. My games were getting larger. And as a designer, especially for myself, it got kind of overwhelming. Like, where do I go from here? And then that's when that micro game challenge came out, and that really forced me to learn the skills of reducing a game down to its smallest form. And to this day, every game I design typically starts out bigger and grander than what it ends up as, because I cut all the fat. There's a lot of reasons to do that. Mainly by cutting the fat, you're condensing the game down to what makes it fun. Secondly, you're also cutting cost, and especially since I do all my games sell through the Game Crafter as a print-on-demand service, it's a little pricier. So if I'm able to cut my designs down to the bare minimum to make the game work and function the way I want it to function, and sometimes I'll add a little bit extra. But this challenge, let's get back on track here, Jason. Single card challenge. That's insane. So let's go through a few more things here. I wrote things down so I didn't forget anything. Players may be asked to use any common items that they have around the house. So that's important to note, because that's the first thing I thought of. Well, if it's a single card, what are you doing with this? How can you, if you don't have little pieces to move around, what are you going to do? So as soon as I saw that, so common things that they list are like buttons or coins or things that any person would have around their house. Can be utilized. And that reminded me of a game that was on Kickstarter way back, sort of, I don't know if it spawned the micro game craze that sort of happened in the around 2013, 2014. But I believe it was called Coin Age. I probably should have done my research before I did the video, but it was a single card area control game that used change, quarters and nickels and dimes, and you took over areas. And it was a Kickstarter. I think it was one of the first, maybe the first pay what you want Kickstarter, where you could just bid, not bid, but pledge whatever you wanted to get the game. Of course, I backed it. And I have it. It's a fun game. There was another small one-card game called Province, I believe, that used a rondelle type system. And you had, I don't know if it came with meeples, but anyways, it was a very small, compact, kind of slightly worker placement rondelle type game. That was pretty good as well for the size of it. Take it anywhere you want. But yeah, being able to use common components around the house makes this challenge palatable to me. It's something that now, okay, maybe I can design something for this, because now I can have ways of adding luck or something to the game, or ways of tracking things. Another thing they mentioned you can use is a person can use their phone, so as a timer, and it also mentions a camera. I'm not exactly sure how a camera would work, what you would use that for, but hey, they write it in the rules, so that's out there. Pens, pencils, dry erase markers, things of that nature can be utilized as well. Scissors, or ways to cut or tear the card if you want to make some sort of legacy style game, or maybe you want to have a couple little pieces that people cut off the bottom of the card and then cut those up and use them somehow. So that adds at least some ability for you to make it more than just a card, because it'd be very difficult to make a game on just a card if you didn't have any other components. But if you read further into the rules, if you actually click on the tab rules, there's a thing, a pretty big blurb in there that talks about if you're designing the game for a specific audience, you can design the game to require certain components. So that's where my error sort of started moving, because it literally says you can use dice, basically. If the game is meant for hardcore gamers or RPG gamers, then you can start utilizing dice. So once I saw that, then I started thinking, well, now I can use coins and dice and buttons and things around the house that people might have. Now I can probably design something. So that's important to know, because I don't know how much has been said about that, about being able to use dice. So dice you can use, and if I'm wrong about that, JT will likely leave a comment below and I'll pin it in the comments. But I believe dice can be used if the game is designed to be for like a gamer type person. So that's basically the gist of the contest itself. But let's move on to how the contest is going to be ran. It's going to be a little bit different than other contests in that there is no judge. Every other contest, I believe, in the past has had a guest judge and or a judge in-house through the Game Crafter judging. Usually it goes through a voting process with the community voting. And then from there, finalists are picked, and then they are judged by some sort of judge. I was actually a judge in a couple of contests. But this contest is going to be based on community votes. So the top entry, so whoever gets the most community votes, will get $100 shop credit. Not bad, especially if you're a game designer. Getting $100 shop credit at the Game Crafter is pretty nice because you can either use it for prototypes or buying a bunch of components for prototyping yourself or for whatever, or buying other people's games. That's probably what I would do. I'd be buying some other people's games to be using for this channel. This is the part that's very interesting to me. It's kind of murky, and JT and or the Game Crafter doesn't really get into the specifics on this, and I haven't really actually JT reached out to me to ask me to do this video, but I was definitely wanted to jump on board because it's a very interesting topic, but I didn't really get into this detail with them, but I'm going to speculate a little bit here. Multiple winners. It sounds like, and I say multiple winners with a question mark because it sounds like they're hoping for a lot of entries, is my guess. And the top person who gets the most votes doesn't get $100 in shop credit, but it sounds like a lot of the games are going to have a potential to get a contract. It's going to be a non-exclusive license, which means that the Game Crafter wants to produce 2,000 copies of a game. Now, my guess, my speculation here is that, before I get to my speculation, the non-exclusive license means that you as the designer will still have the complete control over your game, that you can immediately sell it, do whatever you want, distribute it, pitch it to publishers, whatever you want to do, it's your game. But this little non-exclusive license will allow, you're basically giving the Game Crafter the okay to print 2,000 copies of your game. And if you sign that and say you're good with that, actually I think just by entering into the contest, you're saying that you're okay with this license. So what you'll get if they decide that to choose you is $200 of shop credit. So that's pretty awesome. That's worth spending some time to design a little game here. It shouldn't take a whole lot of your time. And my speculation is just, like I said, I don't know for sure, is that the Game Crafter is obviously going to choose quite a few of these games to do this agreement with. I don't know how many, but if I were a gambling man, I think it would be really cool if they made a community booster pack. Now, booster pack can hold 18 cards, so I think it would be pretty cool if they made a 18 card booster pack that had 18 different games within that pack. I think that would be cool. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. It could be as something where they might just choose 3 or 5 or 10 and use them as handouts at conventions or at protospiels. I don't know exactly what the idea behind this is, but that would be my guess. I think that'd be a pretty cool thing if they did that. So before I run too long with this video, I would like comments below on ideas or mechanics specifically that you think would work on a single card. Now, if you can have little components and a dice, area control could be done, like in that game Coinage, a rondelle system. Even you could do a worker placement to some degree. Keeping track of, you're going to have a very reduced type of game, but I think if you find a nice little hook, as long as you have the player making choices or decisions, I think you could make a pretty good game with a single card. The more I start thinking about it, I went really from this side over here saying, well, that's impossible, to I think we could do something with this. So what are ideas that you have? for a single card game, or what would you like to see, or what do you expect to see out of this contest? How many entries do you think are going to be? I think this has the potential to being for sure the most entries of any contest yet. I don't know what the biggest one contest is up to this point. I know the micro game challenge that I won had like 120, which was one of the biggest ones for a long time. I think another contest broke that record, but I think this has the potential of 200 or more entries, because you can put in more than one game. You could put 10 games into this, and 10 one-card games isn't crazy. So anyways, that's all I have for this week. I really do appreciate you stopping by, and if you have any comments or questions, like I said, please leave them below. Until next time, have a good one. Thanks.